And welcome back. Hollow Knight, episode 7 getting underway. And right off the bat, you may have noticed we got the big pretty title for Fog Canyon, as if we'd never been here before. But you should remember having already passed through this zone briefly in episode 2, when we were coming from Green Path and heading to Fungal Wastes. So why are we getting the title screen now? Well, the reason is we're on a different save slot, and on this save slot, our guys never passed through Fog Canyon, so hence the pretty title screen upon entering it now. As for what you saw in episode 2, that was a different save slot, and I had experimented with a few different paths and orders of events, and had already ended up getting the pretty title screen by the time we first entered it. So that explains all that. As for what we're doing here to start things off, we're in the Overgrown Mound, Devitron, and you know what these mounds mean. You should know by now. Mounds mean shamans, and shamans mean spells. Okay, so Howling Wraiths Devitron, our third and final spell. Let's try it out and see how it works. Okay, not bad. We finally have an upward pointing spell, so we can damage enemies above us, which frequently happens in this game. And there's a small area of effect. It's kind of a conal area of effect above us. So this is a nice complement to our downward directional, Desolate Dive upgraded to Descending Dark spell, as well as our left to right horizontal directional spell, Vengeful Spirit, upgraded to Shade Soul. Now you're probably wondering, why did I wait so long to get this spell, especially considering I'm using a spell build for this whole playthrough? Well, the reason is you need the Mantis Claw in order to get to where the Overgrown Mound is so you can get the spell. And if you recall in episode 2 when we passed through here, we were on our way to Fungal Waste to get the Mantis Claw. We didn't have it yet, so I had to make a decision. I could either hop back up the way we came once we got Mantis Claw and get this spell, or I could just come and get it later. And I chose the latter because I felt like going from Fungal Wastes up to the City of Tears just made for a better flow, and I just liked the way that worked out better. As for why haven't I returned until now, well, we just really haven't been in the neighborhood, so that's why I put it off until now. And speaking of new areas, we've just entered the Queen's Gardens, Devitron. And with it, there's going to be some new critters, as usual. Not these little guys, the moss flies we've seen in Green Path, but these guys here, right there. You didn't really get to see them in action, but they have these little orange spines that they shoot out, kind of like porcupines. Those guys are called spiny husks.
Lien Kla Frieden Laya.
All right, another appearance by Cloth, the big barbarian bug. And it does appear that she's trying to tackle her fears and issues of cowardice and take on a pretty formidable group of enemies. Traitorous tribe, as she referred to them. I've just killed 2 of them with my Shade Soul, and pretty quickly you weren't able to really get a feel for them. They're flying mantises, and they're called Mantis Petras. You're going to see a couple more of them here. And a very formidable enemy indeed. Those guys are very tough, and that boomerang energy disc that they shoot out makes it extra tricky when you fight them.
Nekem no kucsin.
Okay, always nice to immediately get the map for the new area. And conveniently, there's a bench nearby, just out of earshot of Cornifer, no less. So let's have a map break, Devatron. Okay, so starting off, here we are. There's not much to report in Queen's Gardens. We just got here, just got the map, but I do want to summarize a little bit of how we ended last episode up here in Greenpath. If you recall, we were tying up loose ends, kind of mapping out some unexplored areas, and we had come from the stag station here and gone left through all this platforming bit this way. And over in this room we found Nailmaster Shio and learned the Great Slash. And then from there we went back through, and right up in here there was just a small room with a little bit of platforming to do, but most important, we found a hidden charm, the Thorns of Agony. And then back down and continuing right, we encountered our first Grimmkin and defeated him and absorbed our first flame for the Grimm Troupe DLC. Okay, and then from there we made our way to this bench, recharmed, and then down and right back over here to the Stone Sanctuary. Now this is where we did battle with No Eyes, the warrior dream. And also in here we found a mask shard. Okay, from there we recharmed again and went left into this unexplored area. And kind of through here there's some platforming and whatnot. It was made a lot easier by the fact that we already own Isthmus Tier and could swim through the acid. But most important, we got a vessel fragment, we rescued a grub, and we had also encountered that strange mossy tablet with that message which suggested that there was a group here long before the inhabitants of Hallow Nest and the City of Tears. And we ended the episode traveling back this way and kind of musing on the possible origins of Greenpath. So let me clean this up and That's where we ended last episode and right where we started this episode. That's not a very pretty X. There we go. Now, again, we don't have the map for Fog Canyon, so we can't see exactly how this all connects up. But basically, there's kind of just a vertical descent here. And there's a way to go left. And we came down and immediately went left. And we swam through some acid here and went over here and kind of went up and over. Long story short, over here is where the overgrown mound is, okay? And that's where we started and entered and got our new spell, the Howling Wraiths. From there, we went back into this first descent, and I probably should have drawn like another little passageway down, but this way connects down here into Queen Station. You can see how there's just a little bit of an opening on the edge there, because there is another entrance there. So back through and down into this second little descent, and then took our first left, and that connected us here. There was some acid and whatnot that we swam through here, I believe, but that connected us into here with the Queen's Gardens, okay? And from there we really didn't do much. We just went left this way. I think we met Cloth and talked to her here. Fought our first couple Mantis Petras in here, and then over. And then the gates kind of closed right here, if you recall. And I had to do battle with a couple waves of those Mantis Petras, which pretty much kicked our ass. But we got through it, and then up into here we found Cornifer and now the bench for our map break. So, again, not much to report. I'll clean this up. As for moving ahead, we're not going to just, go full on do the Queen's Gardens. We're actually just going to do a little bit, and then we'll do the rest of it later in another episode. For now, we're going to make our way down here. There's stuff to do in here, and then over this way, and eventually we're going to reconnect with Fungal Wastes and do some more stuff from there, okay? All right, before we get too much further into the Queen's Gardens, I want to address why Cloth referred to the current residents of this area as a traitorous tribe. And doing so should also help explain why there are still mantis bugs in the world who are attacking us, even though last episode we earned the respect of the mantis tribes and what seemed to be a cessation of hostility, given we had challenged the mantis lords and defeated them. Now, as for where all this information comes from, a good bit of it we haven't actually learned yet in our playthrough, and so accordingly, on the one hand, I'm kind of cheating and just giving it to you ahead of time. On the other, this isn't really a major story reveal or anything like that. I'm not ruining the story of Hollow Knight by just telling it to you now. And also, I think it helps clear up what would otherwise be a somewhat confusing discrepancy between, the behavior of the Mantis from last episode in Mantis Village and this episode in Queen's Gardens. Okay, with that all out of the way, this is basically what happened. When all the bad stuff started going down with this orange light plague infection, and all the bugs started going crazy and doing bad stuff and killing each other, etc., etc. Well, the Mantis tribe, who was unaffected by the orange light, agreed that they would stand tall and defend the City of Tears and the Kingdom of Hallownest from any threats coming up from below. Any infected bugs, any other threats, whatever. And that's what they did, and to this day, that's what they do. They defend the kingdom from any threats from below. Now, when this decision was being made, apparently one of the Mantis Lords disagreed. Instead of resisting the orange light, this lord felt that the Mantis should freely embrace the orange light, let it infect their minds, and in so doing receive whatever gifts or powers this light confers to its recipients. Now, this Mantis Lord, for obvious reasons, became known as the Traitor Lord. And he and his followers were ostracized from the Mantis village, and they sought refuge here in the Queen's Gardens. Now, this would also explain why in the Mantis Lord chamber where we challenged them, if you recall, I pointed out that there was that fourth broken and unoccupied chair. The idea being that the Mantis Lords, their council, so to speak, used to be comprised of 4 Mantis Lords, not 3. And it was this fourth Lord that used to sit there who became the Traitor Lord and left the Mantis village. So that's the Traitor Lord and the Mantis presence in the Queen's Gardens in a nutshell. There is some more to say about the Mantis Lord and his followers, but it starts to get pretty obscure. And, you start to have to rely on some pretty strained assumptions. So I don't really feel like it would be all that redeeming to do any more of that now. I think rather it's enough just to understand that despite the fact that we challenged the Mantis Lords last episode in the Mantis Village and earned their respect, there is nonetheless this sort of pariah group of mantis bugs who have taken up residence here in the Queen's Gardens, and they are in fact hostile to our little guy. Okay, so another enemy type of this traitorous tribe, as Cloth referred to them. They're kind of the melee version, and they're just called Mantis Traders. So you have the Mantis Trader and the Mantis Petra. As for that key we got, this is a very special, very important key. It was called the Love Key, and we don't know what it opens, but just keep it in the back of your mind for now. We'll find out soon enough. All right, so what appears to be a group of mossy vagabonds overcome with infection, as it said. But more important, they're kind of positioned around a central, almost like a mossy vagabond pontificate. And in fact, if you arrive at that spot earlier in the playthrough, they're actually there listening to like that central figure sort of preaching whatever, mossy vagabonds preach about. And they haven't been overtaken by the infection just yet. Now, it's not that important, but interacting with that infected mossy vagabond gave us a hunter's journal entry for it. Sometimes in the game, there are certain types of enemies that need to be updated in the journal, but unless you interact with an already dead one, you're not able to get it. And here, a hidden charm, the Spore Shroom. This is a fun little charm costing only 1 notch. What it does is it emits kind of a spore-like cloud around you whenever you focus soul and heal, and that cloud will damage enemies and whatnot. Now, it has a limited use in some boss fights and whatnot where there are certain projectiles or other harmful things kind of around you, and it will get rid of them so they don't hurt you. And furthermore, it can interact with other charms in some fun ways. For example, the Defender's Crest, the charm that causes you to emit a heroic odor, basically a big brown cloud of, dung-smelling gas. if you combine those two together, whenever you focus soul and heal, the cloud that gets emitted will be even more potent and do more damage. So again, it can be kind of fun, and it's only one notch, but just like Balder Shell or Shape of Un, as I've already said, I really am not a fan of these charms that focus on defense or restoration and whatnot, because unless you're doing that, it's wasted charm notches. So for me, with the exception of utility charms like the Compass or Gathering Swarm, I'm a much bigger fan of charms that enhance your offense or your damage or the cost of spells so that you can, cast more, etc., etc. Okay, coming up on the next screen is kind of that crossroads where I'm always supposed to go left, but I go right. It's happened several times already. Well, this is the one time I actually need to go right and check this room out. So another warrior dream, and with it another tragic tale, although this one much easier to follow than last episode's No-Wise. So the village below and its proud lords, to which Elder Who refers, that has to be the Mantis village and the Mantis lords, right? And most likely under the influence of the orange light, Elder Who perceived them as crazed and threatening and accordingly attacked, and they in turn defended themselves and killed him. Okay, this is another room in the fungal waste we've never been in. There's a vendor and a bench, and we're going to talk to him, buy some things. But more important, we're going to use Defender's Crest for the first time, and it'll get us a discount. Okay, Leg Eater. Apparently he enjoys the smell of dung. Whatever it takes to get a discount, right, Devitron? So all he has are these 3 charms: Fragile Heart, Fragile Greed, and Fragile Strength. The Heart charm grants 2 bonus lives. The Greed increases the amount of geode that drops when you defeat enemies. And the Strength charm increases your damage with the nail. Now notice they're all referred to as fragile, and their icon is almost as if they're encased in a glass globe. And what that means is if you're wearing these and you die, then they become broken and they're no longer equipped, and you can no longer equip them at a bench or anything. What you have to do to repair them is bring them all the way back to Leg Eater and pay him some more geo. So for obvious reasons, it's pretty risky to try and use these charms. And with the exception of the bonus nail damage from Fragile Strength, these charms aren't even that good, especially for a spell-based build like ours. However, there is an NPC who was introduced in the Grimm Troupe DLC who will, for a lot of geo, permanently transform these fragile charms into unbreakable versions of themselves. Now again, the only one I would consider doing this for is Unbreakable Strength. The problem is, this NPC is going to want 15,000 geo. I mean, it is a lot. And furthermore, it costs 3 notches in your build. So we don't have the geo to do it right now, nor do we have the notch space in our build. Accordingly, I'm not going to be pursuing that for some time, but I did want you to know, eventually, we are going to be using the unbreakable version of the Strength Charm in order to enhance our nail attacks. Now, as for why buy the other 2, well, don't forget, we're collecting as many charms as possible so that we can continue to meet the prerequisites for Salubra and buy the bonus charm notch slots. Okay, so a particularly annoying whispering root there, having to platform around using those bouncy mushroom heads. That's a lot harder than it looks. But we got through it, and with it, we're just over 1,000 essence, so it's going to be a nice return visit to the seer with all this essence we've gathered. So you notice here, I go into this room to the right. We've never actually been in there. And then I immediately leave and start hunting down some creatures down here. The reason I'm doing that is I'm out of soul. So I have to go kill something in order to get some soul. And the reason I need soul is that there's a loose floor area in this room, and it's going to require Descending Dark in order to break through it. So I had to go get soul so I could cast that spell. Okay, and our reward, a hidden journal entry for the Gome. If you recall, Gomes are those big gray tube worms that kind of punch in and out of the ground. They have spikes. You can't damage them, you can't kill them. So this is similar to the Mossy Vagabond earlier in the episode. This is how you get the journal entry for the Gome, because you can't actually kill them otherwise. And what is going on, Devitron? A new big pretty title? Are we in a new area? I thought we were just coming up from the fungal wastes to the forgotten Crossroads. Oh no, look at this place. New enemies with humps of orange light infection and orange gas everywhere. This is the infected Crossroads, Devatron. What has happened? So in here is what is known as a hot spring. Notice it's just kind of a bath, a pool, little pond. And when you stand in it, it replenishes all your soul. Now that room has always been in this part of the map, but I just had never gone in there until now. So as for the elephant in the room, right? Why has the forgotten Crossroads become the infected Crossroads? Why are there all these orange pustules of light infection everywhere? Why have these enemies changed into different versions of themselves, right? The Vengeflies are now furious Vengeflies. They're bigger and they have orange light pustules all over them. And after you kill them, their husks kind of quiver and explode. And they'll hit you for 2 damage, like that, instead of just 1. So what causes this is one of 2 things, and for us, it was acquiring the Monarch Wings, the platforming tool that allows the double jump that we got after defeating the Broken Vessel. Now, as for the other trigger, we haven't done it yet. It's not important to mention, so I'm not going to talk about that just yet. As for what this means, now that this has happened, Dev, well, as you can see up there, it blocks certain passageways, and like we've already mentioned, it kind of transforms some of the inhabitants here into stronger versions of themselves. Story-wise, what it means, it's basically just an indication that this orange light and its plague and infection and whatnot, it's happening again. It's starting to spread. Now, we don't quite know the source of it yet, but it's happening again, and things are getting worse before they get better, right? So I've already mentioned those furious Vengeflies. Those guys are the Wandering Husks, and they're now called Violent Husks, and they'll just charge at you and explode for 2 damage. And then that second guy I just killed there, those were the Leaping Husks. They're now called Slobbering Husks, and they just spit the orange goo at you. Okay, so we had acquired enough charms to get another bonus notch slot from Salubra. And we've almost got all the ones that she sells. There's only one more that she sells. Now, there are some other bonus notch slots out in the world, and you acquire them through various means. But as for the ones that Salubra sells, there's only one left. And in order to get it, you have to have collected all the charms, okay? It's like 40 or 44 charms, something like this. But once we have all of them, then she'll sell us that last bonus notch slot. All right, so another amusing appearance from Tiso, the kind of, I don't know, adventurer, gladiator type bug with his shield. And he's still in search of this legendary Colosseum, this fabled arena that supposedly exists somewhere down in the depths of Hallownest. And accordingly, he's grown kind of frustrated with any kind of calm or peace or serenity. So another warrior dream, this time Zero, who we learned from the journal, was executed for crimes against the king. His dialogue would suggest either regicide or attempted regicide at the least, but either way, like the other warriors in their dreams, he was driven mad by the light and confused defeating the plague, which was his greatest desire, with defeating the king himself. Accordingly, he erroneously has concluded all these years that hoping at all to defeat the plague has doomed us to failure, when in fact, as he realizes once he's awakened from the dream, it is our own actions and their unavoidable consequences which doom us to failure, assuming we're doomed to failure at all. Okay, several rewards to go over from the seer, but most important here, the dream wielder. Great charm, only one notch, and it increases how quickly you attack with the dream nail, and it also increases the amount of soul gained when you hit enemies with the dream nail. All right, the Dream Gate, hands down one of the most helpful upgrades in the game. Lets you set a waypoint by holding down and pressing Y, and then anywhere in the world you can travel to that waypoint by holding up and pressing Y. Very useful. Okay, a nice bunch of rewards for our hard work collecting essence. And there's more of that to come, as well as more to say about the seer. But for now, let's check out this new area she opened to us, the Spirit's Glade. So quite an interesting collection of spirits here at rest in this Spirits Glade. And in case you're wondering, you can strike these guys with the Dream Nail and permanently put them to rest. And just like when you do it elsewhere in the world, you get one essence for doing so. However, that first spirit with whom we spoke, Revik, he warned us if we raised our nail in here that, we'd have to deal with him. And that's what happens. He kind of transforms into a boss. And while I've never done that, I've read about it, and I don't think it's impossible to defeat him, but it's pretty hard and pretty annoying. So the first thing we can know about this place is that it's the only place in the game where there are consequences, serious consequences, for permanently putting a spirit to rest with the Dream Nail. Furthermore, we know that this place was sealed off, apparently by the Seer's former tribe, and we also know that the Seer was never supposed to unseal this place, and that prohibition was a part of some kind of penance that the Seer is supposed to be paying. Now, the Seer also mentioned that she was tasked with helping the wielder, i.e., the one who wields the Dream Nail, in this case us, and guiding the wielder in the care and use of the Dream Nail. Well, the thing is, the Dream Nail is precisely the weapon that could put these spirits to rest. Okay? It's the only thing in the entire game that threatens these spirits. Accordingly, I think it's safe to assume that this former tribe of the Seers felt that there were certain spirits whose lives and dreams and memories were in fact worth preserving. They were useful or beneficial somehow, and they didn't want them permanently obliterated by the Dream Nail, so they took measures to preserve them. At the same time, the Dream Nail still needs to fulfill its function, which seems to be to get rid of the bad dreams, okay? All of the harmful and destructive ambitions, the foul memories of sinister deeds, etc., etc. And in the case of what happened to Hallownest and what seems to be happening again right now, all of the crazy dreams, okay? All of this light infection plague-induced madness, these delusional ambitions and these confused perceptions and these psychotic reactions, all of it needs to be obliterated from the kingdom and put to rest forever. And notice there, I just set our first dream gate. So wherever we go off to in the world, if we hold down up and press Y, we will be gated back to this location, which is conveniently next to a stag as well as a bench. Now, as for our charms here, notice I've got Grimm Child back in the mix, and you can bet that there's going to be a Grimmkin around the corner, and with any luck, we'll get our second flame. Okay, not too bad there on the Grimmkin. And like I said, that puts us at 2 of 3. So just one more, which I believe is somewhere up in Crystal Peak area. And then we can return to Grimm and see what's next for the DLC. As for right now, we're heading to the relic vendor to acquire some geo for our hard-earned and collected relics. And then, as you can probably guess, we'll be heading back to Dirtmouth, and we're going to spend it.
Velmi Ardred. Kachael Liasoke. Velmi Ardred. Velmi Ardred. Velmi Ardred. Boris' son? Gian. Velmi Ardred. Velmi Ardred. Velmi Ardred. Kachael Liasoke. Velmi Ardred. Velmi Ardred. Velmi Ardred. Boris' son? Gian. Helmadelka.
Okay, not a bad haul there. And notice as I leave, I use the Dream Gate for the first time. So this is going to gate us back to the city storeroom stag station where I set the gate. Okay, I'm not going to go just yet to the vendor. There's a few more things to do which will get us even more geo. But notice here I'm resetting our Dream Gate, okay? So now it is set in Dirtmouth, and whenever we use it, we will gate to this location instead. And here, like I mentioned, we need to get up into Crystal Peak to get the third Grimmkin, which will complete our task for Troupe Master Grimm, and we'll be able to return to him. All right, so a hidden charm up there. Obviously, you need Mantis Claw to be able to get at that. And a nice use of the gate, as you saw after I got the Grimmkin and the flame, I just gated right back. So, as you can probably guess, having the Dream Gate really speeds things up, you know. There's a fair amount of fast travel in the game already with the stags, but being able to set your own waypoint and then use it from anywhere is pretty big time. So we are going to start zipping around the world much more quickly. Now up here, you should recognize this. This is the Ancestral Mound. This is where we first got our first spell. So why are we back here, Devatron? So nice of the snail shaman to notice that we have upgraded the spell which he gave to us way back in episode 1. And as nice as it was to see him and talk with him again, that's actually not why we came back here. So sit tight. You're going to see what we're doing here in just a sec. Aha, a whispering root, Devatron. That is, in fact, why we came back to the Ancestral Mound. And in case you're wondering, it requires the Monarch Wings that give you the double jump in order to get up into that secret area. So even if we wanted to, way back in, let's see, oh yeah, episode 1, Devatron, when we were here last, we wouldn't have been able to jump up there and get at the Geo Mounds or anything else. Okay, so not too bad a Whispering Root, and that puts us about 1172 Essence, I believe is what it said. And the thing I need to mention about Essence, now that we're Dream Gating, I didn't mention it yet. When you do use the Dream Gate, it costs 1 Essence, so it kind of permanently decreases your total Essence. So it's not that expensive, and we don't use it that much that we need to really be super worried about it, but it is something to keep in mind as you're trying to build up Essence and, you know, meet certain prerequisites. For example, get to 1800 so that we can enter the White Palace, etc. And another thing to mention real briefly, you probably noticed these guys, the giant bruisers that used to be little gnats. Well, now they're big and they're oozing orange infection. Those are called volatile bruisers, and they're a result of the Crossroads becoming infected. Okay, nothing real special, no charms or anything, but we did get a Hallownest seal out of it and quite a bit of Geo. Between that and turning in at the Relic vendor, we're up to 4616, and I think when we went to the Relic vendor, we were at like literally 6 Geo or something, so we've definitely cashed in on quite a bit, so let's go have some fun and spend it. Okay, I'm not interested in that rancid egg or the key, but definitely good to get that 1500 geo mask shard out of the way, putting us at 3 of 4.
Papa nada.
All right, so our Grimm child has gotten a little bigger, and he will start to attack now, but otherwise kind of an anticlimactic turn-in. You know, Troupe Master Grimm just says, go get more flames. You know, here are 3 more Grimmkins throughout your lands, hunt them down and acquire the flames. So, like I said, a little bit anticlimactic, but have no fear. After this next round of collecting flames, when we turn in, there'll be a bit more advancement in the action as well as the storyline. All right, just like that, 2 out of our next 3 Grimmkins down and flames consumed. And notice here, I don't believe we've ever used this elevator before. We used the other one, but this one takes us from Resting Grounds to City of Tears. So let's explore this area a bit. All right, something of a trap there, but pretty fun fight, actually. And check it out, our reward. Oh, yeah. Big time, Devatron. 3 of 3 on the vessel fragments. So you'll see it up there in the left, just to the left of the big circular soul meter. We have not 1, but 2 bonus soul reservoirs. So this is very, very helpful indeed. Okay, so mostly just leftover City of Tears aristocratic husks and their treasure. And some sloppy fighting led to some close calls, getting down to 1 life, but no big deal. And we're just over an hour, so after I unlock this stag station, we're going to call it quits. But not before some fancy platforming. Check this out, Devatron. Oh yeah, big time. That's actually really hard. Took me a lot of tries to get that on camera. Hope you're enjoying Hollow Knight. We'll pick it up here next time and see you in the next episode.